Mining Network's coverage of PDAC is brought to you by Midnight Sun Mining.
Adrian O'Brien, welcome back.
Glad to be here, as always.
Mate, why don't we just start off with, obviously we've had a chat in the past, I know the story really well, but what is Midnight Sun, and then we'll dive in.
Okay, so think back to our very first chat, whatever, Beaver Creek, maybe 10 months ago or something. We had two things. We had a target called Dumbwa, which is the largest and highest grade soil anomaly on record in Zambia. That's our primary target. Now, it isn't just a target anymore. We have a discovery. We've got 4 kilometers of drilled strike length. We are in the process of building out what we think is going to be Zambia's next major copper deposit in this area called the Domes. So we have that. That's our flagship. But we have this secondary piece, which is called Kaziba, and we've delivered an MRE. So the last time you and I chatted, I said we were going to go out and drill. We drilled 350 holes since then. We have drilled, we've executed, and we've delivered an MRE. We did it in about a year. And it's 2.3 million tons at 1.41% copper. Now, at first pass, that doesn't sound huge, but it's very high grade. It's entirely acid-soluble malachite, so acid-soluble copper sitting at soil right at surface, can be scooped up with an excavator, and we're 6 kilometers away from Kansanshi's SXEW circuit in need of feed. So there's a natural fit there. We've got a few different parties we're talking to, but now we're going to try and monetize that, and that's the plan for future funding for Dumbwa. And we're well funded, but there's a whole plan there that kind of dovetails together.
Yeah, exactly. So you've got this high-grade opportunity right next to First Quantum. Yeah. In terms of, there are different ways of monetizing that. Can you go into potential theories in terms of how that could be done?
Yeah, and we have a couple different ways of looking at it, for sure. So if you think about it this way, you've got this high-grade oxide deposit. Now, let me set the stage a little bit, because people can, it's hard to picture what that looks like. This is, if you have soil right at surface, this is within 30 meters of surface, okay? At the bottom of that, you hit barren dolomites. So it's just this layer of soil, and in that soil, you have fist-sized chunks of malachite. Malachite's entirely acid-soluble. It's a great copper mineral. Most importantly, for First Quantum, it neutralizes the acid coming out of their smelter. So it's a twofold benefit for them. One, they get rid of their environmental liability. Number two, it's an opportunity to create cash flow by creating cathode copper from oxide. So it's a great natural fit for them, and they're low on feed, so they need material. But it's as easy as it gets. Like, this is stuff that's just sitting at surface, and it's loose material. It's transported, it's not connected to a sulfide system. It's a really neat deposit. It's the only deposit I've ever seen that's copper with nugget effect. Ultra high grade, but it's different entirely. So
okay. But this is really, from what I understand, the way I was looking at it was, this deposit is either a near-term cash flow opportunity or something that you could potentially liquidate to fund
Dumbwa,
a much, much bigger prize.
Absolutely. Yeah. Dumbwa's the big prize. Like, make no mistake, Dumbwa is the big prize. Yeah. Kaziba has always been, for us, it was a mechanism by which we could put capital in the bank to attack Dumbwa. That's the goal. It's got a lot of value, but that value, if we extract a third of that or a quarter of that in cash and apply that to Dumbwa, that's a huge win.
Yeah. Okay. So with Dumbwa, obviously it's very different. It's not as high grade, but it's a lookalike. It's very similar to Lumwana, which is Barrick's. I guess it's their main copper asset at this point, isn't it? It's an absolute.
It's their flagship, for sure.
Flagship,
absolutely.
Sure. I mean, just remind us, just because I want to get the value of these sort of deposits. How much did Barrick buy Lumwana for, and how big was it at the time?
Oh, I love this part of the story. Barrick bought Lumwana from Equinox 20 years ago for 7.3 billion.
Yeah.
Think about that for a second, right? At $1.50 copper.
Yeah.
Wild.
So you've got something that potentially 20 years ago was worth almost $10 billion. Yeah. Okay. So in today's market, obviously quite different.
$6 copper. Not only that, that was 900 million tons. Kevin Bonnel went in and delivered 1.6 billion.
This is so this is quite important to the story,
it is,
right? So Kevin Bonnel was the guy when Lumwana was at 900 million tons.
Yeah.
Went in, done a 24-month drill program, exploration strategy, almost doubled the resource, and then paved the way for this 2 billion super pit that we're now seeing that.
You got it.
But Bristow and whatnot we're super excited about. From what I understand, Kevin Bonnel, the guy who ran all of that, has obviously joined as your COO.
Yeah.
He looks at Dumbwa as a lookalike and potentially something that could be even bigger. Yeah. So this is obviously a huge opportunity.
Yes.
What's the current, so Kevin's come in, he's now the CEO, he's been in for a while now. What's he up to? What have you been doing since he's been there?
So what Kevin brought was this understanding. Now, if you look at the camp, okay, you have this concentration of billion-ton deposits. It's the only area in the world that kind of has an average size and scale of around 1 billion tons And the deposits are all pretty consistent. They're about 0.5%, 0.5, 0.6, they're in that range. The outlier to that is COO Kevin, which is like 1.4 billion at 3%. Different story. Now, when you look across the entire area, you've got all of these clusters of deposits. Most of those sit in the sediments. So you got these big basement domes, you have the sediments around them, and these deposits typically form in the sediments. But you have two outliers, Lumwana and COO Kevin, which are in the basement dome itself. Now, what's unique about that is that geology's really only been well understood for about 15 years, and the guy that really unraveled it is Kevin Bonnel. So he was brought into Lumwana by Barrick after they struggled with the deposit for 15 years and told, we need a tier one, we need an asset we can hang our hat on. We want to be Barrick Mining, Barrick Metals, whatever they were going to name themselves, not Barrick Gold. We want to be a big copper producer. So deliver this asset for us. 24 months, gives them 1.62 billion tons of ore. He gives them 62 years of mine life. He gives them 9 million tons of contained copper. Now they've got their flagship. They become Barrick Mining, and away they go. Kevin brings Barrick to the table. We don't end up doing a deal, but we get the best thing we could have gotten out of that. We get Kevin Bonnel. So he comes over, approaches it with the exact same methodology. He says, look, this and Lumwana are lookalike. They're the same thing. They're analogous. Same geology, same timing, same setting, same layered mineralization, same stacked horizons. Like, it's all the same. So he says, I'm going to take the same approach. I know what I did at Lumwana. I know how I did what I did at Lumwana. I'm going to do the same thing here, and it'll be successful. So we step out of the way. Kevin comes in. We make sure he's well funded. Kevin attacks it. Third drill hole, he makes the discovery. Now we're 140 holes in, 4 kilometers of strike length, and marching our way down the first 12 kilometers of this target. We'll get there by the end of the year. So we're going to show the world how big Dumbwa actually is.
Okay, so you're 4 kilometers along a 20-kilometer soil anomaly. Okay, so in terms of the drill plan, am I right in thinking you've got about 10,000 meters being drilled per month?
Per month, you got it.
For the rest of the year?
Yeah.
And then that will get you to about almost 12 kilometers.
You got it.
In strike. Okay. And in terms of the analogy between Lumwana, like, are the widths and the grade is all very similar,
It's
right?
just about identical. So
okay.
What you're looking at with these systems is you've got this basement dome, okay? The basement dome itself, these fluids were pushed through that basement dome and they permeated the basement rocks. So you get these lenses, okay? The lenses run for a huge distance. They're right at surface. They kind of roll north to south, kind of this wave shape, if you will. And this layer runs and runs and runs, huge amount of kilometers on strike. And the lenses are kind of stretched out east to west. So Lumwana is very, very similar. This is, of course, what we're dealing with at Dumbwa. And when you're looking at the way they sit, they're just stacked horizons. So you get the highest grade in the center. The grade has a gradual drop off east to west. And as we drill it, our job is to define the east-west extents of these things and build a good plan. So you mentioned the 10,000 per month. So here's the thing we're doing that almost no junior does. And when you look at juniors, I mean, I've been doing this for 30 years. I can't even tell you how many times I've seen a drill program with 1 kilometer, 2 kilometer step outs, because everybody wants the biggest arm wave they can make, right? We threw that right out the window. We're not in this to make an arm wave. We're in this to show the world total conviction and show the world how big this is, but to deliver a data set that's bulletproof and, for lack of a better term, no pun intended, no holes in the story, okay? We want to take this thing forward and we want to drill 50 meter centers east to west, 100 and 200 meter line spacing north to south for 20 kilometers, okay? So 2 big bite-sized chunks, the first 11.8, and then the next 10 we'll do secondarily. First, we're going to get the 11.8 done, 10,000 meters a month, 5 drill rigs turning, and we're going to deliver that first 12 kilometers before the end of the year. It's astronomical, and a data set that no one can argue.
Just tell us, so you've drilled already the first 4 kilometers, right?
Correct.
What have you found out so far? I'm assuming, based on what you're saying, you sound pretty happy anyway.
We're pumped.
I've seen the drill results, obviously, but for those who haven't, I mean, yeah, just tell us a little bit about what sort of mineralization.
For sure. So look, the average grade here that we're aiming for is anywhere from 0.3 to 0.6. So what you're looking at is there's going to be high points, and there's going to be low points. There's a gradual grade drop off east to west. So when you look at the drill results, you'll see 0.2s, 0.1s, 0.3s. Those are the outside edges typically. And then there's going to be areas where it's much higher grade and areas where it's lower grade. That's to be expected. Lumwana's the same, okay? So this is what I like to say, this is a combination of resource delineation and exploration drilling.
But the drilling you have done so far, sorry to interrupt.
No.
that is confirmation already, really. The longest
sure.
first 4 kilometers.
For sure.
What you thought with this 20-kilometer soil anomaly, you've confirmed the first kilometers.
We've got it.
You've got it.
We've got the discovery. We've got a model. So why I say that it's half resource delineation and half exploration is that this model has evolved. From the very first iteration to what we're using today, it's changed dramatically. But what we know is this. You've got 3 or 4 stacked lenses. That's confirmed. They run for at least 4 kilometers. That's confirmed. Okay, we've got confirmed drill strike length of 4 kilometers. We've released 29 holes. We have 110 holes waiting.
And all of the mineralization in terms of depth, what are we talking about? So starting from surface, going down to about
200 meters.
Okay.
Yeah. So we've kind of capped it. We've hit mineralization down to 266. The average seems to be between 175 and 200. Average width varies. So some areas it's 250 meters wide, some areas it's 500 meters wide. And there's areas that we're expecting it to blow out up to 1 or 2 kilometers.
Wow.
So it can change a lot. Your tonnage can change a lot as we move north. And we're getting into this area, we talk about the copper kill zone or vegetation kill zone. That's just ahead of us now. And that's an area where historically some of the best drill intercepts are. It's exciting. It blows out up there, it gets wider. And, we're seeing a bornite core, so the highest grade stuff at center, and then that gradual grade drop off. So it kind of goes from bornite to massive chalcopyrite to disseminated chalcopyrite, more disseminated chalcopyrite. And eventually on the east and west extents, you hit a pyrite shell. That's the end of it. So as we go across, we can track that. And then there's always the opportunity for more mineralization outside of that general 20-kilometer target, but that takes groundwork, which we're doing now. So we're going to make sure we cover everything.
And so valuation point at the moment, what are you, about 200, 250
Today,
million?
270 to 300. We bounce around.
Canadian.
Yeah, Canadian.
And if you have something that you were talking about, obviously Barrick bought for almost 10 billion 20 years ago, and you have something that you think is going to look like, if not bigger.
Yeah.
Surely with the drill results that you're showing with Kevin Bonnel, with the exploration plan that you have ahead of you, with the soil anomaly, with the vegetation kill zone, it's all looking pretty exciting.
Everything is pointing to this being like what our target is 1 billion tons at 0.5, right? That's the target.
But
it might be
my main point
lower.
is if you're at that point of your evolution and the pathway forward is quite clear.
Yeah.
You're at 300 million Canadian. Aren't you a takeover target? Is that keeping you up at night a little bit? That someone's going to take you out?
Of course. I mean, when you're in this position where you have an asset like this is, I like to say, I've been doing this for 30 years. These are once in a career. These are the kind that everybody's looking for. You get an opportunity. And that's why for us, it's total conviction. It's not messing about doing, a $2 million program. It's about putting 40 million in the bank, hitting the ground running, 5 drill rigs, get to the finish line as quickly as possible. Why? To show the world how big it is and to make sure you protect yourself.
How well insulated are you from a takeover bid? What's the shareholder base? Because I'm just thinking, you've got Kaziba that we talked about at the beginning that is clearly feed that they would quite like for their
There's value there.
There's value there for them, right? You have Barrick next door to you. You have so many majors now in Zambia where I think BHP, Rio, Barrick, First Quantum, there's a whole swathe of new guys looking. Obviously, Ivanhoe just picked up a hell of a lot of
8,000 square kilometers of grassroots ground.
Yeah,
like
which makes sense because they want to diversify away from just
and near their West Foreland stuff in Angola, so it all makes sense, right?
Yeah, but there you are, 300 million valuation with one of the best looking
right in the middle of the camp.
Right in the middle of the camp. Yeah, with obviously a near-term revenue opportunity with someone next door as well. Yeah. So yeah, in terms of the shareholder structure, how well, because if I'm assuming you guys want to hold on to this.
For sure. We want, look, at the end of the day, we know we're not a mining company. So we can just take that myth out of it. I don't like pretending. We don't need to pretend. We're not a mining company. So we have an asset that's going to be of value to whether it's Barrick, whether it's BHP, whether it's Glencore, whether it's Ivanhoe, whether it's whatever. You've got these groups there that are looking for what we seem to be on track to. And we think it's going to be the next major deposit in the belt. So our job, our goal is to delineate that as quickly as possible. Now, I'm not worried in the immediate term because we've got a lot of work to do. We've got 4 kilometers of strike, but we're doing this extraordinarily quickly. We're going to deliver before the end of the year. That's where we hit pause, tell the world what we're looking at, how big is it, what have we shown. As I said, our target's 1 billion tons. It could be 0.4, it could be 0.3, it could be 0.7. We don't know yet. Right now, we're seeing an average grade that's consistent with every deposit in the belt. The goal is to get to that finish line as quickly as we can, and at that point, we move to the next step, which in our plan is to go up north and start drilling. Hit the northern section, keep showing the world how big it is, and really build this to be a great target for somebody to put into production down the road. But to answer your question directly, does it keep me awake at night? I think at this point, we've got an incredibly loyal shareholder base. One of the big things that I've done with Midnight Sun since I joined and that we'd had as a strategy as a team was to bring in institutional holders. You look at the story of Midnight Sun historically, it was very much a retail situation, which a lot of these companies are. Very first financing, we brought in $2.2 million of pure institutional money. That was our first taste of having an institutional holder. Now, with our last financing, 15 funds, $30 million, extraordinary. The book was 65 million. We closed 30 and a half, all institutional. So now we've gone from being a non-institutional story to a 30+% institutional story. We've got the backing. Those guys aren't fools. They know where something like this can go, and they're there. They've got our back. They're loyal. Our shareholders are loyal. We built this retail group that have been with the story for 12 years. They're not looking for $3 a share.
Yeah.
So you know what I mean? Like we feel confident. We just need to do the work.
If you understand the story, you can see that there's a long way to go still. And so why would you want to cash out early?
Totally. You waited 12 years. Would you want to jump out early, right? Like you want to,
yeah, especially
we want to get this to the finish line, and there's no telling what that finish line actually is, but we build the best project we can. We show the world how big it is. If we're right, okay, like you brought up the perfect example. Lumwana went for $7.5 billion when copper was $1.50 a pound.
Yeah.
They had 900 million tons. Now they're 1.62 billion tons at $6 copper. So if a brand new company, now you've got, again, Ivanhoe, First Quantum, Barrick, BHP, Rio Tinto, Glencore, Freeport-McMoRan, all these groups circling around, Anglo-American, all circling around, all looking for a brand new major deposit in the middle of the belt. So if you serve that up on a silver platter at the highest copper price we've ever seen, and this copper deficit, so I sat and watched Robert Friedland last week at BMO. And I love watching Robert Friedland. I mean, I've been seeing him present since I was 20 years old. And there's a reason why the guy is at the very, very top of the game. But he made a really good comment at the beginning of his presentation, which of course, nobody pounds the desk harder than Robert Friedland when it comes to copper. Okay, he gets it better than anyone. 10 million tons of contained copper need to be discovered per year for the next 25 years to impact the global deficit. Where is that going to come from? And if you can define a deposit that falls into that size range and drop it right in the middle of the top camp in the world, where does that put your project, right? There's the thesis for Midnight Sun.
That's what you need to tell Robert. Yeah.
That's it.
Look, in terms of the outlook for the next year, then obviously we've spoken about 10,000 meters drilling per month. So at the end of the year, you're going to really drill out the rest of this. What else could we potentially see? Obviously, we're going to see so much drill results, which hopefully is obviously going to excite people.
Yeah.
We might see something on Kaziba potentially as well. Do you
think?
think?
We're working on that. So, we made it very clear in our news release with the MRE. We delivered our tonnage, so 2.5 million tons at 1.41%. We've got a resource. We opened the door to conversations. Nothing we can say on them publicly yet, but obviously we threw the door open. We're having those conversations. And we'd like to deliver a deal on Kaziba and extract that cash. So that cash is the forward looking at Dumbwa. Yeah. But think of our cost, okay? We're drilling for $160 a meter all in. Like, where else can you drill for that kind of cost, right? So our 35 million in the bank right now takes us to the finish line on the first 12 kilometers with 15 million left in the bank. We're in great shape. We've got lots of time to get a deal done on Kaziba. There's no rush. We've got the drill, path for going forward now to get it to the finish line and deliver that first 12 kilometers by the end of the year. And when you look at it, we and I talk about this a lot. Like, you look at drill results. I think the big thing now is getting the public to understand what we're sitting on, getting them to understand what we've already shown. It's not a porphyry, okay? People are used to seeing 100-meter intercepts on a big porphyry system that are 0.5 to 1%, but what they forget is those are 2 kilometers underground and very often at the top of a mountain. Those are extraordinarily difficult deposits, and most of the ones you hear about come with such a large capex, they'll never reach production. This is the same amount of contained copper in these deposits at surface, flattened out like a pancake, stretching for 5 or 10 kilometers. Now, you could drill 10 to 30 or even 40 meters of 0.3, 4, 5, 6, 0.5 or 0.6 on this all day long is going to build a major copper deposit in the middle of the camp. Yeah. So when people adjust their expectations and understand what those results are. Like we put out 20 meters of over 1%. We've put out some incredible, like 40 meters of 0.51. In a deposit of this style, that's an absolute barn burner hole. But people have to adjust their expectations and understand what we're seeing here. And once they realize what the system looks like, you know, as we deliver those drill results, we show the world how big it is. That's the real critical catalyst for us.
Yeah, no, agreed. I think with porphyries, it's more, you might see, like you said, those 100, 200 meter hits.
They're splashy.
They're splashy.
But what do they really mean?
But yeah, but the way like you said, they're very, very deep. And the way you've got to look at it is rather than 100, 200 meter hits, you've got 20 kilometers of potential hits. And that's all near surface. And that's the way I think people need to get their head around it. But Adrian, I think this is one of the most exciting stories in the copper space for sure.
Really appreciate that.
And I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yeah, always.